What's up guys, David here and welcome to the Fit Pro Daily. A new week means a brand new topic, and this week we're going to look at online coaching and lead generation for your online fitness business. And we're going to invite Tim Drummond on this week as this week's guest interview from the Institute of Behaviour Change to share his insight and his knowledge on a slightly different side of online coaching, focusing more on the behaviour change rather than actually doing Zoom sessions, coaching, or just generally giving them workouts and meal plans. Throughout this interview as well, Tim's going to share with us insights and how to potentially charge a lot higher price for this style of coaching. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Let's dive into this week's guest interview. Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to this week's guest interview. This week is a returning guest. Second time, Tim? Or was it third?
Second time.
Second time. Oh, you kind of forget when you keep inviting other people back on over and over again. It's like, how many times are we up to?
I think it was about a year ago or so, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe that's what it is. We can just say we're celebrating the 1 year anniversary of Tim coming on or something the first time. Yeah.
I like it.
So this time we're going to talk a little bit about the behavior change side of things, but most of all, how we can turn behavior change into an actual physical online business where we can charge a little bit more than your general Zoom sessions, 12-week coaching program style of things. Is that right?
Yeah, and also dovetail it into like how people can use it when they're in the gym as well. Like, I mean, it's definitely something that I was doing at one point.
Yeah. Okay. So, but before we do start, for the people who don't know anything about Tim, like who is this guy that's talking to Dave today? Introduce yourself. Who is Tim?
I don't know when we met. It was a few years ago, wasn't it? I was a personal trainer for about 12 years ago. I qualified. I just wanted to do something that I enjoyed. That was it, really. I'd had a job before, a career in the city as a futures trader, and didn't like it, and then was a bit stuck of what to do. It was going to be either a teacher or I just was going to go and do a personal training course. Like, not massive expectations. I used to read a lot about nutrition and training. I was just interested in it. Started in fitness first in Shepherd's Bush, and then kind of realized I was decent at the business side, although I didn't really know what I was doing. Built a decent business pretty quickly, and then was in fitness first, kind of doing the box gym for maybe 3, 4, 5 years, and then started getting. This is actually when I sort of really got into what I now call behavior change coaching. Back then, I kind of probably would have called it more like mindset, that kind of thing. Became quite a successful personal. I was charging a lot of money for my personal training, and then the whole online thing went big. Just thought I'd give that a go. Did quite well there, and then went down the mentorship route. Been doing that for about 6, 7 years now.
Nice. So Tim, as you can see, has been in this game a long time. He's not one of these that just pops up and then kind of like makes this up. He's been doing it. He's been doing it for a number of years. So before we dive into it then, in a super general form, a lot of people go online, they run programs for their clients, they might do Zoom sessions and stuff, but we're seeing a lot of behavior change pop up in a lot of posts recently. And maybe for those who don't know actually what behavior change, what does behavior change actually mean? How is that different to just giving somebody a 12-week plan?
Nice. I kind of look at it like if you take a step back, there are a few people doing this, by the way. There's a couple of people that are out there. I remember when I first started, there was a couple of guys called the Body Transformation Academy, a guy called Dax Moy, and I was learning loads from this stuff. And the reason I initially started like looking into this stuff was that I thought I was a good personal trainer. I genuinely was. I cared about my clients. I read nutrition. I read loads of training stuff. But I didn't really sort of get my head around the problem was that they just weren't doing it. And some were, by the way, but most, and I'll be honest, when I was a personal trainer, if I looked back at like the clients that came in, we did a consultation and they said, what are your goals for the 12 weeks or however long it was? And they told me, and I was honest, how many of them did I actually help get to those goals? I would probably be surprised if it was 1 in 10. People leave because they didn't get results. And there's a school of thought, well, the client didn't do what you say, get rid of them. That was kind of what we see in Facebook groups. How can I actually get the people that are in my programs, or first of all in the gym, how can I get them to actually do what I say? Like, and because they weren't, and the way I used to tackle it was give them another program, make it more complex, give them a better, do undulated periodization, and do, like, I don't know, it was back in the day of like low carb diets, and so I'd get them to do a high carb day, and it was like what I just didn't. I just wanted them to get better results and more of my clients. So then when I started charging a lot of money, it became even more important, certainly in person and online. And so then you fast forward and you've got kind of this online thing that's happened for the last 2 years since COVID. And you said there, like, lots of people just do Zoom workouts, which is fine. It's good. It works. It's a workout. Part of me thinks, well, why don't they just go to the gym? That's personal training works well in the gym. I don't think it's a great modality for doing Zoom workouts. You lose a lot of the benefits, which is that you actually get to be next to the person. And so I think then it was like, even like the explosion in the last few years, a lot of people would sort of recognize sort of like the idea of habit-based coaching, which is really just sort of taking what clients are doing, drip feeding what they're doing, like 2 to 3 things each week, really paring back the program, tracking those habits, which PN did really well. We both personal PT Distinction, the whole platform. Like, I'm a massive fan of their platform because they're based on like habitual change, which a lot of personal trainers get. The challenge is when you're doing all that and the client's still not doing what you say. It's like, why is that? Why are they not? Because and that's really frustrating, because you're invested in learning this stuff. You do care. And again, you probably get like 4 out of 10 of the client's results, but it's still the 6 out of 10 that aren't. And that was when I started really looking into things like, why do clients sabotage? Why do they self-sabotage? Like, and most of it at the beginning, it's just an understanding that they do. Why do clients have things like limiting beliefs? Like, they do. Things like NLP techniques around future pacing. And it's just even like the mindset. There's a book by Carol Dweck, which is the initial, that's where it came from, mindset. So how can I take that stuff I'm reading, but actually have a structure and a system where I can do certain tools and techniques with my clients? And actually I go from the difference between 4 out of 10 and 9 out of 10 is huge in your business. Those 5 out of 10, what can I do differently that actually gets them to follow what I'm very good at? So that's where we come to sort of behavior change. And it's understand, in the end, behavior change is just what it says on the tin. It's looking at what their actual behaviors are, not what you're telling them and you hope that they do. So most clients, for instance, when they're not getting results, they're often lying to you. They don't tell you, but the fit pros don't know how to get to that level of conversation. They just get frustrated, and then the client leaves. So a lot of the work is around, like, how do you get into the client's mind, the psychology of weight loss? Because for me, you need to get the training and the nutrition down. You need to learn that. But if anyone's listening, it's your clients aren't still doing what you say. That's what behavior change fixes.
Yeah, and that's massive. I can just imagine. I'm just going back to the days where I was doing it all by myself, and clients would come in and say, "Oh, I haven't lost any weight." And like, "Oh, have you been following the meal plans?" Yeah, I've been following them perfectly. And in the back of your mind, like, they're just lying to me now. Yeah, you've not changed at all in the last. I know you're lying. And like you say, the behavior side of it. And I'm guessing you've gone, or the term behavior is an easier sell than the word mindset, because I'm guessing mindset, the client might struggle to understand that, where behavior is
It
easier
doesn't really mean it. Mindset does mean something. If you go and read Carol Dweck's book, it does. But I think that the term mindset is banded around in the fitness industry a lot. It's like, I'm a mindset. I do mindset. What people usually say is I do personal training, nutrition, and mindset. But it's like, what do you actually do? And the key is, like, what are some techniques? And we've basically created like tools. We call them lessons or modules. It's like, how can you structure a 12-week program, for instance, which is how we deliver all of our stuff. By the way, this can be done in a gym as well. And it's like, what is, for want of a better word, it depends who I'm talking to. It's like, what's the homework? What is it that you can do that clients can do outside of their sessions that actually starts? I mean, it does change mindset in the end, but it's more than just like a mindset. Carol's work. She gets one of the tools we use, and everyone can use this, is called a locus of control. And that's just like 17 questions that basically figures out, is this person, do they believe they make shit happen, or does shit happen to them? Which is kind of my way of talking about it. It's like, do they have an internal or external locus of control? So someone believes that whatever happens in the outside world is the dominant thing that affects them internally, they're going to find it hard to change. Whereas if they can see that what they decide internally is more important, it's much easier to then have a conversation about, like, how do you change things? And so just that tool right at the beginning is a really nice tool to put in a 12-week program, because you get to understand the client, but you also get them to understand themselves. That even if they go, you know what, I've done this thing, and I think that generally in my life, I look at external things that affect me internally. Then you can start having a conversation about, is that really true? So you can change things like that. And I think the mindset terminology was awesome, but I'm not sure if it really helped.
Okay. So before we actually do dive into, like, I'm seeing questions come in already about the 3K price range and all this kind of stuff. For somebody just getting started in this type of field, or they're watching this or listening to this for the first time and they're like, I'm quite interested in what Tim's saying, could you maybe lay out just a few ideas or things that they would need to have in a behavior change program for it to be a behavior change program?
Yeah. So I'll literally tell you what we do. So, and the way that I'd look at it is it's like 3 levels. It's like, what's the first level, which is the sort of the actual the knowledge, the nutrition and the coaching. This was what I created originally, because basically I did it myself because I was working with clients, and then I was like, I always felt like I was starting from scratch. So I started trying to create, like, what I eventually called a blueprint, but I kind of called it a skeleton, because I wanted to be able to, like, run all of my clients through it, which were very individual people always, but I didn't want to be like start from scratch or winging it. So the blueprint is what we use. It's called the 12-week blueprint. And the first level is, like, people need to understand that they probably already know enough around nutrition and training. That's good. So they can deliver that. And the way that we structure it is we suggest people do 12-week programs. Generally speaking, it's about 30 to 45-minute coaching call each week. And our aim in the internship, which is the program we run, is that you don't have interaction with the clients outside of that time, because you shouldn't need to. And it's not helpful. And what a lot of fit pros do is they do things like, oh, you get unlimited access to me via email. You wait until those clients who make use of that, and it's not helpful for them, because you'd basically teach them how to fish and all that kind of stuff, or like give them a fish kind of thing, right? So we do that. It's about 30 to 45 minutes a week. And so you check in on the coaching call around all of the things that they're doing. There's an idea of, like, habit based. So there's things like change 2 to 3 things each week. That's it. Nothing more than that. In week 1, and I designed this because this is how I started to do it. I realized that I was overwhelming clients. I used to give them a 50-page welcome book, literally, because I thought I was the cleverest person in my gym. By the way, the person who was really the cleverest person was the person that gave them a 2-page ebook, because they don't need to need 50 things, 50 pages worth. So I started experimenting with myself. And the way that my first week in the coaching calls was ran was that I would get them to bring photos of 3 days of food diary to the first coaching call. I would get them to take the measurements. That's all I would do. And then on the first coaching call, I would screen share their photos with them and say a simple question: what do you want to change? And that's it. And it's like, I don't need to know deep nutrition, but what I do know is when the client sits there and looks at, they're eating donuts for breakfast or drinking 3 cans of Coke a day, it's not hard to stop doing that. If you look at, like, the dynamics of change, a good example is when you go and do cultural change in an organization, everyone would say it's an interaction between 2 people. It's not one person telling the others. It's not the new bosses telling the staff, because they'll push back and they won't do it. It's a conversation between 2 people. And if you make it that it's their idea, they're way more likely to do it. So when I say, what do you think they should change? They're the ones that take ownership of it already. Again, most of the time it was clear what the biggest problems were. So we'd go through that. I'd set them 3 goals for the week. One would be, generally speaking, one would be breakfast, because I think that that's an easier meal to change. The other one would be the one that I just said, which would be self-selected. And then the other thing was that all I was trying to do in week 1 is increase the amount of exercise they did. Not complicated, because most people, especially when they come in for online, they've not worked out for 6 months.
Which
So
just jumping in at that stage there, because there's a
they don't need
question.
a training program. They just need to go with my man. Literally, what do you enjoy doing? Running.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here, but with
My bad.
dodgy with internet. There's a question come in about the MyFitnessPal stuff there. So what you're saying is their suggestions in how they develop. If it's a great suggestion, we go for it, but we're not actually giving them a proper workout program to go and do. We're letting them work on what they enjoy doing. So we don't really need a proper fixed coaching program or MyFitnessPal, because it's all based on their development.
Yeah, so the way that I created this was I've actually created like three specific periods in the 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So the first one is called diagnostic, and I explain this to the client is, by the way, I have loads of metaphors to explain this to clients. I know how to persuade them that this is the right thing to do. That is really just looking at getting an overall look at like what is actually going on with them, their mindset. I do something called a DMartini values assessment. I'm looking at what the biggest rocks are. What I'm giving them at that point is just 3 things to do. By the way, if they did those 3 things, they will lose 2 pounds in the first week. It's not hard. Then it goes diagnostic, then it goes foundations, and then it goes acceleration. So in the foundation phase, I start building in some things like Myfitnesspal. I generally, depending on the client, and by the way, I ask the client and I always get their buy-in. At that point in the foundation phase, I sometimes start programming exercise. It depends on your avatar and it depends on the person as well. With the acceleration phase, again, it does depend on the avatar and the client, but with the acceleration phase, I've often actually given them reasonably complicated workouts and macro plans. But the thing that Fit Pros do is they tend to do that right at the beginning. And what they'll do is this is the way it plays out. You'll just think something's going wrong. The client won't check in. The client starts not doing what you say, and then they'll cancel. And you're wondering, why have they cancelled? Most of the time, it's because personal trainers over egg the pudding. So all I need to know is, can I do enough in each week to get them to lose £1.5 pounds to £2 with 3 little changes? And if I can do that, then within the 12 weeks, they'll lose £20. The MyFitnessPal, with the blueprint, we introduced MyFitnessPal in week 5. All I do in week 4 is I just literally ask them to download it. I just say, I want you to download MyFitnessPal this week, and I just want you to play with it. And that's literally all I say. A lot of the time, the clients will actually proactively start putting stuff in. Then in week 5, I get them to just track their breakfast. Then in week 6, I get them to track the whole day. And then probably more towards week 7, I actually start giving them some input about, like, if I want to do macros or stuff. Remember, if they've lost £2 a week in the first 6 weeks, they're happy days at this point.
Just taking what Tim's saying now about building these blocks up gradually and slowly. If you are a gym owner watching this, you need to 100% do this with your onboarding process, is what we
100%.
generally call it. Tim has a slightly different name for it. But when they come into the gym, especially at DK9, it's not nutrition, mindset, coaching, nutrition, everything all in one go. The first 2 weeks is just, can you come to a maximum of 6 sessions? Can you come to a maximum of 6 sessions for the first 2 weeks? And like Tim says, in week 5 for him, he then introduces MyFitnessPal, doesn't explain how to use it. Because if you bombard them straight away, from experience, we've noticed they generally drop off at week 6 at the end of their program because they've been overwhelmed. Whereas when you build them up slowly, they feel like they understand the whole process and they're much more likely to buy into the long term. So online and offline, the process is exactly the same. Yeah.
And I think if we kind of look at that, it's when Fit Pros start to, and when I started learning this stuff and reading stuff, there's a book called Cybernetics, which talks about self-image. And I wouldn't have known what that was. I wouldn't have known how the hell that's got anything to do with my clients. But people view themselves in certain ways. And when you're a Fit Pro and you've never felt like that, you've never been, some have, by the way, but if you've never been overweight, you actually don't know what it feels like to be overweight. And most people that come to fitness are either out of shape, they're overweight, they're not, I mean, that's what they are. And a lot of them have never been in shape. So they have this self-image of themselves, which is that I'm a failure with my weight. I can't do it. How many times have they tried and failed before? really my only aim in week one, I know I said there's 3 aims, is really that I want them to arrive on the second coaching call and they've hit the targets. That's all I care about, because what I started to learn about was things like self-image. And every time they fail, it's just another hammer in the nail. See, you're worthless,
2
useless.
steps back.
Every time they see a win, it's like, maybe this time's different. So they then start attaching that maybe this time is different to their experience with me, which, by the way, if you want to get referrals and you want them to stay on for longer and you want to get good results, then this helps. And bit by bit, with that, they don't need to know I'm doing this, but what I'm actually doing is I'm starting to change their self-image. We have ways and tools of doing this as well, but it's very simple. And it's like, what you want is the person at the end to have changed the way they view themselves, which I think, like you said, a lot of fit pros sometimes get that outcome, but they don't quite know the mechanics behind it. So if you can start understanding this stuff, then you can start going, okay, well, maybe I should slow down because it's the best thing for the client. They're not me. They're not personal trainers.
Okay, so we now understand the program, or we have a better understanding of what a behavior change program is. Us as fit pros, as qualified personal trainers and nutritionists and all this. But now we need to try and find prospects. We need to try and tell the world about this newfound discovery of how we can actually help them change. How do I walk up to the guy in the street and say, man, I'm a behavior change specialist, I'm going to change your life forever? How are we going to convince these people to actually understand how we can actually help them?
I think there's a term that marketers use, is that you sell them what they need, or sell them what they think they need and sell them what they want and give them what they need, right? So some of this is like just understanding marketing, understanding lead generation, definitely understanding sales, because a lot of fit pros think they understand sales, but they don't. And there is a difference between selling $60 programs and $2,500 programs. So one of the shifts I think that's definitely happened is that in the last 2 years, it has become much easier. And I know this is my gig, but genuinely it has become a lot easier to sell online. A lot easier. I've been doing this for 8 years and it's easier now than it's ever been. When I started doing it, it was actually quite hard because Zoom didn't exist. People they're still spending money online, not like they do now. Everyone's spent the last 2 years on Zoom. People have bought, not coaching, but they've started to live their life online. So the barrier between like offline and online, I think, has got smaller than it was before. But obviously then it's about like, where do I find people that want to spend that sort of money? I'll ask you a question actually, David. If I ask the average personal trainer how many clients, if they had 10 people that were the right clients standing in front of them or on Zoom, how many do you think the average personal trainer would suggest that they would close?
Oh, that comes down to experience massively. 10. I'd probably say about half, depending on their experience and the quality of the lead as well.
Yeah, personal trainers normally think it's more than that. I'll close 7 out of 10. I'm like, no, you won't. By the way, that's not true because they're not very good at selling. I think that the way I'd look at it is, if you do need to get the right people in front of you. But what you want to look at is you want to start being able to book in, like, if you can close 1 in 4, that's a decent place to be. So if you can have 4 enrollment calls and 1 says yes, not 5 out of 10, but just 1, you then just need to focus on, how do I get 16 enrollment calls in my diary in a month to make 10K, which is the quickest and easiest way to make 10K online, 100%. Probably argue that maybe if you charge more, but let's go there. So then you need to put your marketing into, I don't need loads and loads of leads on taps. I just need to get the quality of leads and the right people in front of me. But getting 4 enrollment calls a week it's not easy, by the way, but it's not the most difficult thing in the world as well. So the way that I would probably start with that is, if I want to charge that amount, that high ticket, I've got to differentiate myself. I've got to stand out from everyone, or I've got to stand out from the crowd. I wouldn't necessarily always lead with, I do behavior change coaching. I would lead with what the problems are of that person. So Luke is a good example of a client of ours. When we started working together, he called it Body Confident Academy. Female clients that he'd done work with and had good results, male clients, young clients, old clients. Like, his brand was a bit colourful. It just made no sense to me at all. And by the way, he was charging decent money, but it was just in spite of his knowledge of marketing. So we first of all looked at, like, before we look at platform, he was on the wrong platform, but it was like, who do you want to work with? What's the avatar? I mean, you know this, most people know this. It's like, what's the niche? Then it's the description, which is the avatar. Then we want to start getting messaging right to that person. And then we start looking at, where do we go, what platform? For Luke, it was that he actually decided that he wanted to work with just men and high-performing businessmen, executives. Okay, cool. So let's look at the avatar. Let's figure out everything about them, like what keeps them awake at night, what's the story in their brain, like what are they struggling with, what are they people by getting laid, getting paid, and not dying. It's like, which of those are these people buying? Like, is it that they're not buying fitness, they're buying looking better in front of their partner, having more energy at work? Like, and we changed the name of his program to the 1%, and it was like the 1% ... for men who need to look the part. So you're already talking, and that's the messaging. You're already talking to a certain type of person. Luke went from just being lost on Instagram to literally getting people messaging and going, dude, like, it sounds like you're speaking to me. Like, tell me about your program, because he got all of those stages so well. Luke, and by the way, I know this is going to raise bullshit meters. Luke sold a program last week for £5,000. That's the first time he sold it at that, for a 12-week program, which is about $6,800. That's a year's work. But he was charging, like, when he sort of hit his, maybe after about 6 months, he had built the prices up to about 2.5, because he's getting in front of the right people, and he's getting in front of people that £2.5 is not, as long as you know how to present the offer and you have a system to do that and a script and the knowledge of sales, he gets more than 1 in 4 yeses.
Yeah, and it's like so true. Like, if you're charging the higher end, you don't want to be tagged in the Weight Watchers Slimming World audience, because their thoughts are, I can pay £5 and I can lose a couple of pounds and maybe not go anywhere. Like, if you're going with the guy you were talking about, then he won't be tagged in that audience. He is tagged in a very unique specialist audience, and it's just a case of finding out, where do they hang out. Where do they hang out in Facebook? Where do they hang out in LinkedIn? Where do they hang out in forums? Especially when you're online, it's just finding out where these people, where their pockets of space are, and you can go in there and you do what you need to do to get yourself known in that area. Yeah,
I think, like, if you started a bricks and mortar business, if you were like, I don't know, if you wanted to start a clothes a suit company. It's like, if you had the money and you had the experience and you knew what you were doing, you'd probably go to, like, Savile Row or nearby. You would, in essence, know this in the bricks and mortar business. Go to where these people hang out. If I wanted to, there's loads of coffee places in Shoreditch, because there's lots of people that like coffee. Like, that's just the kind of vibe it is around there. It's exactly the same online. It's not rocket science. I think the thing that made Luke stand out, and Luke does run ads, but we don't run ads until people do at least 10 grand a month. But you know more than me personally. I don't have anything to do with the ads in our business, but it's like, you start targeting people. Yeah, but the way that ads work is you understand the messaging, because it will eat you alive if you're not very good at it. If you're not very good at messaging and using the messaging, I don't mean messaging people, I mean actually what you write in your copy and your content, you're just pouring money down the drain. So Luke just got very, very good at that. Daniel Priestley talks about getting a PhD in your clients' problems.
100% true. I mean, you just have to make sure that your audience who are listening and watching are getting you. Not a case of just putting it out to anybody and anybody. Like we say to most people with your ads, it needs to attract a certain type of person and repel the other type of people. And those people are repelling, we're never going to buy anyway. So don't be afraid of people unsubscribing or giving you a shitty comment on your post because they disagree with what you're saying. If you're getting this, it's good. It means, well, if you're doing it right, it means that your messages are on point to remove those time wasters and only attract the people that you actually need to work with and want to work with. So we're putting this content out and we're getting a load of people, or we're getting, like you say, 4 people are showing an interest this week. You've booked some Zoom calls, and now we're saying we're going to charge $2,500 or pounds or whatever your currency is for this program. I'm like, wow, the most I've ever sold was £50 one-to-one. How different is a sales conversation for a £2,500 program to a one-to-one boot camp small group offline session?
They tend to, I don't know how long generally people are on the phone for those. They tend to be a bit longer. So they tend to be a bit long. From my experience of like working in a gym or like speaking to people, their calls tend to be a bit short and they tend to be a little bit more surface level. So one of the reasons why when you're selling high ticket coaching, certainly behavior change coaching, is that you actually want to make sure that the person is the right fit for you, because you can, if you understand sales well enough, you can sell people into programs. Doesn't mean that they're going to be the right kind of client for you. And so a lot of why behavior change coaches, from my experience, are better at selling or convert more is because there is a correlation between sales and coaching. Like there's a lot of like telling is selling in sales. Like you ask questions and that elicits the response. You don't just sit there and tell people stuff the whole way through, because that it's just like, stop trying to sell me stuff. So when you start looking at the depths of actually how to sell things, persuasion in the end is the thing that links the two. They tend to be a bit longer, but that's okay. It should be, because it should be a bit more of a vetting situation as well. One of the things
just to jump in there with the vetting process, I'm guessing with the way you teach it all, before you actually jump on your sales call, there is some sort of vetting application removal process before they've even had a chance to book, or is it almost open to anybody to book?
It depends. And if someone's brand new, the suggestion that I would do is like have a 10-minute call with the people first, vet on the 10-minute call, and then if you feel like there's someone who's going to be someone that you could work with, then you put them through to a longer call. As people go through, like Luke does a vetting process with an application and stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily do that straight away. I think the better option is just to do a 10-minute call, and all it takes on that 10-minute call is if you're not feeling it and you don't think they're right, then you just say, look, here's some advice, and they think that you're really awesome. So that's the way I would do the vetting process at first. But again, like the advice I would give to someone who's Luke did 25 grand in English last month. The advice that he gets is very different to someone who's never sold anything online. So one of the things that I realized when I was doing personal training was that I charged quite a lot for my personal training, but there was people around me that were charging £65 an hour, which is actually quite cheap for London now. So let's go 70 quid an hour. Plenty of the people in my gym had two clients, a client twice a week. So that client is already paying £140 a week. That's not unusual for a PT client in London, but you could take it outside of London. Let's say it's somewhere, I don't know, Sheffield. Let's just say that was 80 quid a week if they train twice a week, which is not unreasonable. So if we go back to London, for instance, and obviously online, you can target these people in London, 140 quid times 12. That's already 1,680 that someone is already going to spend. It's not a totally crazy amount of money for someone to spend on personal training, because all you're going to do is going to go and find the people or sell to the people that we're going to spend it on personal training, and they just spend it on you instead. So the way that we do it is we launch a beta version of the program when we're teaching our guys. We're like, what do you eventually want to charge? And if they say eventually I want to charge 2.5, let's start at around 40 to 60% of what you will eventually charge. 10 clients, that's always our aim. 10, 12 clients through the program, the system, get confident, get results, get case studies, then you put the prices up. So if I was new to this, I probably wouldn't jump straight to 2.5. I'd probably jump to something like, I don't know, 12, 1,500. Then all I need to understand is that people are already spending this. They're already spending on personal training everywhere, all over the world. I just need to get the right people. Most of the sale is done, like I say in the training that we give our guys, it's like there's always 2 sales in every call, and the first one is to you. If you don't believe it, and especially back in the day when there was a lot of Fit Pro mentors that exploded, and they weren't necessarily helping people with delivery or anything like that. They just helped them with sales and marketing. I heard it quite a lot, that what to do with them afterwards. That affects coaches, personal trainers' mindset, and they just won't want to keep doing it. So I think if you strongly believe that you can create a program that doesn't compromise on the results that you would get with someone who trains with you twice a week, why would you not charge the same price? So a lot of it is in the mindset and the approach that the person who's making the sale has. You've got to believe it.
It's an interesting way of looking at the price there, because like you say, most people were going to think like £3,000 is a lot of money for a 12-week online program. Maybe how you must have to deliver way more. You must have to deliver like envelopes made of gold with their welcome packs in and stuff to justify that price. But once you start, like say, breaking it down, if you were saying they did 3 sessions a week at £40 an hour each, you're getting close to that mark anyway. So once you kind of break it all down and really understand the numbers, that is what you're actually getting paid for, is those 3 hours. Although you were saying it's one 45-minute coaching session a week, yeah.
I mean, a lot of marketers, and we both know this, a lot of marketers will say sell the result, which is true, 100%. So in the end, it's the result. As long as you have a system, or you have access to a system, or you learn it, where you're confident, even the best behavior change coaches that we train up, they're not going to get results with everyone. Like you don't get results with every client. It's impossible. Tony Robbins doesn't. So as long as you've got that confidence that, I can create a way of delivering this result that's as good and doesn't compromise on what I would get in the gym or the results. And to be honest, I actually don't think personal training is that much of a results-driven business. It is when it's really good guys like what you guys do and you're doing. But most personal trainers in the gym don't do this. They do an hour session with a client or 2 hours, and the client just goes off and comes back next week just as fat as they were the week before, and that never changes. I had clients that were with me for 6 years. It's like they spent tens of thousands of pounds with me. Doesn't mean, by the way, that they didn't see that as value. There's a certain subsection of the marketplace that just wants the result, and they don't want to personal train. They just want the result. In fact, most people don't actually want to personal train. So if you can get your head around, like, sell the result, it's not about your time, it's not about blocks of money. Add the value with something more holistic, which again, by the way, you can do this in person. You can have a holistic approach to coaching and training your guys that isn't just, here's a workout and then that's it. That's why you guys do well. That's why people who have really good gym spaces do well, because they probably add a lot of other stuff in as well. So if you can get your head around that and what I just said about the money, if you don't believe it though, that's where most fit pros fall down, is they get on a call and they don't believe it themselves. I asked for $150,000 from one of my clients once. And I just asked him, and he'd already paid me 18 grand for 16 weeks. That was personal training. And I was just like, I didn't care whether he said yes or no. I knew it was that value to him, not to me, because I grew up with no money, but to him it was. So why is it not value for someone who's wealthy and earns 200 grand a year to spend 2.5 grand on fitness? Of course it is.
Yeah, and like, was it on your last call that we did, and we were talking about something like this? Like, if you're going to a high power CEO, or you're going to a high power lawyer or something, and for them to lose 2 stone to give them that extra confidence to go for that extra 10 grand a year pay rise, or to be able to move up further in the business, which gives them access to even more great stuff. Surely in their terms, a small £2,500 cash payment to boost their life up by an extra 20 grand or get them married or something is more or less worth it to them, because we're tagged in as a very different type of person to Slimming World or Weight Watchers type of person. Yeah.
And the last, like I said there, the last client that paid me for PT, when I told him how much it was 12 grand in English, which was about $18,000. Literally the words that came out of his mouth were, "Is that per month?" It's literally what he said to me. And I was just like, oh my fucking God. And
yes, it is. Yeah.
I should have, shouldn't I? But like, yeah, of course, this guy's like, you're talking like super rich, but it's not like sort of semi-wealthy, averagey type people. You could earn 50 grand a year and be willing to spend £2,000 on your fitness. That's not totally unreasonable. If you build like Luke does, if you start to really build like a reputation and you start doing this, and it's repetition and it's doing more and it's putting more content out and getting better at it and getting better at sales and getting better at marketing, getting better in referrals. When you get one wealthy person, he tends to have lots of wealthy friends. Like, get the results, right? And then you'll start to get these people that come to you. And honestly, it's not when the first time I got £2 grand and someone said yes, I was shit myself, to be honest, but I was just like, okay, they just said yes. I just asked for the money. I was like, it's £2 grand. Like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, fun. Sorry, can I swear on this? But I have already. But it's a shift in mindset as well.
Okay, so a few questions for me and the offline type of Fit Pro now. So most of us, we have an entry offer, then we move them into a long-term 12-month, 6-month, 18-month contract. So take for us, they come in for 6 weeks, our front-end offer, and then we move them on to a long-term. Why does online generally start around the 12-week, 3-month mark? Why doesn't some of the online just offer a 21-day, 6-week program? Why do they generally have a longer-term program to us offline Fit Pros?
I can give you why we do it. I actually think there are plenty of people that do online. They do the sort of 21, 28-day thing, but they often do it like cheap or free or whatever. The 12-week blueprint is what I started doing myself. So I decided that it was 12 weeks. Like, I had input from other people. There are reasons for it. Is that if, for instance, and I'm not saying this doesn't happen in personal training, but I think that just the angle that you're going at the result is slightly different. So I wanted people to fail in my program. I needed them to. And what I meant by fail is I needed them to be in a position where in the past they just would have given up, because I needed to coach them through that. Because that is basically, if you look at something like self-image, they see themselves as a failure. So when that happens, ding, 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 it's like, and by the way, they don't have this exact narrative, but it's I told you so, you're a waste of time. And what they'll do is they'll find excuses, or they'll be too busy, or I'll start in January, and all these things, right? And I used to be this idiot personal trainer, just used to judge people. And like, I didn't quite know what was going on in their minds. So my job, especially when I've signed someone up for the whole 12 weeks and they paid in full, which is what I got them to do, because they can't then back out. The backing out at the end of I'm really busy at work, can I have a break? No, because I need them in my program for 12 weeks. And one part of that is I needed them to fail, fall off the wagon. And then I needed to teach them that it's okay, because we can just get you back on the wagon. And if I can do that, then I can start reflecting back to them. You know what do you take from this first 6 weeks, 7 weeks? And I graph all their weight loss out, by the way. And I'm kind of making this up in some way. Like, these are just an amalgamation of people. But they'd lose weight, and then they'd have a fuck up. They'd put it back on. My job was to say, well, it would be like this, it'd be the other way. But my job would be like, it's okay. One day or a week, it's fine. This is something that I need to change for the long term in their psychology. So I would sort of do well. If you know anything about pain to pleasure, like basic motivation theories, people move away from pain towards pleasure. So generally what happens in a program is they lose a little bit of weight and they can just lose what looks like it's motivation. It's not. They just need a new one. So sometimes people would fuck up about week 3 or 4, partly because the wane of the desperation that made them sign up has gone, and then they beat themselves up. And I wanted them in there. So if I finished at 6 weeks, I'd never had the chance to do that. I know that to change habits takes, I don't know, there's difference of opinions, but let's say it's 30 days. But to change some belief systems about someone's self takes longer than just changing habits. What I'm actually doing is I'm rewiring the way people think about themselves. So if you read one of the documents that we did is in week 1 and 2 of the program, we do a simple documents like week 2 and 3. One is like, where are you? Like, there's a character description of them now. And the other one is a character description of the person that they want to be. So you ask them questions, then they flip it over and they write a story. Who is the person that I would like to be? If someone wants to be 3 stone lighter, get them to write a description of that person. What do? Do they eat donuts every morning? Do they, when they're in Starbucks, do they grab a donut? Do they eat? No, they don't. And so you have these, like, I guess you could call them bookends. This is the way that someone sees themselves now, and this is the way that they would ideally want themselves. And then you just use them as bookends. It's like, where are you now? You're basically looking at, it's called future pacing. You're looking to get them towards this new version of them. That doesn't take 6 weeks. It takes longer. It takes 8 weeks. It takes 10. I mean, sometimes it takes more than 12 weeks. So there's a lot of things that we're doing in the 12 weeks that you literally need the time. And I'd just say the last thing, if someone's not willing to spend 12 weeks doing it, then fuck them. Like, seriously, you think you're going to undo 20 years, 10 years, 5 years of not only miseating, but also just the way that they see themselves? It's not going to work.
Online and offline, what you're saying there is you really see the difference between online and offline. Offline, our aim is to get them in the short end so we can keep them for the long term. Because if you're an offline business and you haven't grasped the concept yet, and Tim mentioned this probably 10 minutes ago, most people don't come in to get amazing results. They generally come for the community, the meeting other people, the hangouts, the bond, the family they get from joining a program like what we do, a boot camp, a gym, or whatever. Whereas the online is a more serious type of thing. So for someone like us, our aim is to convince them to stay for a minimum of 16 months, 6 weeks, followed by a 12 to 14 month kind of stint. So if we flip this for the online side, then Tim, they come in for you for 12 weeks. Do you then almost like discard them, or do you have like a follow-on program to keep them for like we do for 16 months, say?
I just step back to what you said. I think that we're friends with Ben Owen. You obviously know him as well. And like, one of the things that I remember talking to him about is that within a in-person coaching business or training business, you can do the behavior change stuff, but it needs to be much slower, because actually sometimes it pushes against what they're there for, which is, I just want to enjoy myself. I want to get fitter. I want to get stronger. I want to just be around people, and they love that part of it. And if you put too much of the mindset stuff in, it can actually alienate a lot of people, especially if you push it onto them too much. So you do it, you just spread it over a bit more time. And sometimes people take it and sometimes they don't. With the behavior change coaching or any online, especially transformation-based stuff, it's kind of, I often say, it's like, it's very naked. You're not just coming in for a workout. You don't just get the benefits of getting stronger and enjoying literally coming to a gym with like-minded people. So it's very naked, which has its pros and cons. It's much more results driven in the sense that it matters. I'm not saying it doesn't matter in the gym results, because results can be very different things in the gym, but actual transformation, stroke weight loss, change of mindset is much more important. The aim that we do is within the 12 weeks, you have a major change with them. They lose the weight, and you actually like have a structure and a system to be able to change things like their self-image, how they view themselves. And you have a way of feeding back that. You have a way, all good. You have a way of feeding back like that this is happening. At the end of the 12 weeks, depending on where they are as clients of ours, we either do a rebuild, but we have 2 different clients. At first, we just encourage do a rebuild of another 12 weeks. Generally speaking, with in-person businesses, there's a certain sweet spot on how long you keep people for. With an online transformation business, your aim is not to keep them for as long, in the sense of your aim is to change their belief systems, change their patterns, habits, and then you've done your job. We then teach people that after they've been with us for a while, we show them how to build a 6-month program out. And then that's the next step. So at first, if anyone's watching this, 12 weeks. When you start getting this is what we do when our clients start getting more confident, more experience, it goes 12 weeks, 6 months. So generally speaking, the 6 months programs are just twice the amount that the front end are. So we've got clients that charge like $6,000 for their 6-month programs. You're looking at average client spend, which is important. But if you've got 50, Kerry sells last 10 clients she's had in her first program, 9 of them have done the mastery. So you're talking about an average client spend there of 2 6 is probably about 5.8. And you'll know this, David, being Facebook man. If you've got a business that an average client spend is 5.8K, you can spend money on lead generation because your costs aren't very
You'd
high.
happily put £1,000 into that just to find that one
Literally,
person.
you can blast people out of the water. One of the reasons why some of our guys, the ones that are doing big numbers, they can blast anyone else out of the water because they make so much money per client that if you're selling a 97 or 297 online coaching program, I mean, the cost of acquisition needs to be minimal. If you can if you can afford to spend 1,000, some of our guys are about 800 or so. And if your average client spend is that sort of money, even if your average client spend is 3,000 and your cost of acquisition, including everything, is 800, that's, I don't do this as a living. I'm not a marketer, but I'm assuming that's not too bad.
And again, you really see the difference between online and offline here. An offline approach like us in the gym, our aim is to almost break even, if not make a small profit on that front end. And our main profit comes from the long term, 12 to 16 months. Whereas online, because you're charging such a higher amount, you can afford to go way higher on the cost initially, because that initial payment from them is going to be significantly more anyway. So to make sure this interview doesn't go over more than an hour, Tim, is there any final tips or hints or insights anybody watching this around the behavior change should really consider for their own fitness business?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've got a call in 3 minutes. So a couple of things. If anyone wants a copy of, we've got a freebie giveaway, which is called the 12-week blueprints, the science of transformation blueprint. They can have a copy of that. It's like a 40-minute, 30-minute training. My overall tip is that get into this. Like, you don't have to get a PhD in this. You don't have to do the 7-8 years of study that I've done it. But in any fitness business, results and retention and reviews, these are the things that are going to make your business more successful than other people's. It means clients stay for longer, they refer their friends, they don't bitch and moan about on review sites, which all happens. You don't have to go down the rabbit hole that I went down, but just start to understand that, you know what, there is a world out there that just telling someone to do something doesn't mean they're going to do it. It doesn't mean they're lazy. Doesn't mean they're not motivated. It doesn't mean you just kick them out. It means that they actually probably need some more help. They don't understand how to ask for it. They feel, to be honest, they feel judged. And I would never have meant my clients to feel like that, but they did. They don't know how to say, you know what, I'm struggling. So if you can go and start reading about some of this, even if it's just small touch points in whatever business you have, you will start to see that your client results improve. And lots of people get into this because they want to impact more people. Lots of people get into it because they want to make more money. It's like, if you start understanding that there's a level below just what we were taught in personal training school, or even in just the habits, it will massively pay back to your business, massively in clients. Like someone was saying, how do you charge $3,000? Well, get results with the majority of your clients.
Nice. Okay, Tim, for anybody that wants to find out more about you quickly, then where can they go and find more about Tim Drummond then?
You can add me on personal profile if you want, which is timdrummond.com. So Facebook /TimDrummond.com, sorry, not .com, TimDrummond.com. Or you can just come into my free Facebook group, which is the Institute of Fitness Behaviour Change.
Tim, appreciate your time today. Thanks for coming on, and we'll probably see you in another year. I'm guessing.
Reception is terrible.
I'll speak to you soon. So that was Tim from the Institute of Behaviour Change, giving us a really good insight into behaviour change coaching, how we can charge more, how we can deliver better programs, and most of all, get the best possible results for our clients. So if you want to go back, go to the start taking some notes and start implementing some of the stuff that Tim was talking about. Before I do go, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I'd love you to subscribe. Simply press pause and subscribe, and I'll speak to you all tomorrow. Cheers.